Good evening. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining. And for all of you at home, 10 courageous women are going to share their journey with technology. They are short and sweet, but extremely powerful. Thank you.
Back in 2014, I was a lucky 9th grader with a smartphone of my own. It was great. I was finally able to be on all the family WhatsApp groups. However, as time went on, I wanted to live without a smartphone, but it seemed like such a nerdy thing to do. It's 3 years later, and I'm still telling people that this is just a trial period. Yes, it's been a long one. I definitely miss out on many things. That's hard. But to me, the gift of presence is worth everything.
We are now in a house without electronics for the kids, but it was not always like that before. The time that we use it the most was the Friday afternoon. I needed the kids to be busy and quiet while I was preparing for Shabbos. So I had to understand that if I'm taking it away, I have to replace it with something else. So I decided to be ready for Shabbos before the kids come home from school. And I bought a lot of games, a lot of books. And Baruch Hashem, now we are no phones in the house for nobody.
As a millennial, my teenage years coincided with the advent of social media. And as an adult, I'm still trying to find the balance. So I decided to not turn my phone on until I finished davening in the morning. Now, before this, I wouldn't daven consistently in the morning, but now I love the morning, and I do so much in the morning. It's the most productive part of my day, and I just need to still figure out how to go to bed on time. So
I want to start off by saying that while I don't have my own phone, I do use my mother's phone, and it has no browser or WhatsApp. And as much as I would love my own phone, I am a normal teenager. I do know myself, and I do know that it would be bad for me. I would easily become addicted, and the social peer pressure really isn't good. What bothered me is that when we're at school events and girls are on their phone, they're not with their friends when they really are. They're just on their phones, and I really don't want that.
One day, my 11-year-old son decided he wanted an electric scooter. He would buy it with his own money, he said. He had a counter-argument for every one of ours. I was very unhappy about the idea, but I needed clarity on the safety issue, so I started doing some research. Every parent I asked confirmed that there were safety risks. With newfound clarity and conviction, we came back to our son and said, "We're sorry for misleading you to think it was up for discussion." He looked at us, asked a few questions, and that was the end of the conversation. Yes, we can stand our ground, as long as we have the confidence and the clarity that the limits I am setting are truly an expression of my love for them. And with Hashem's help, they will feel it.
My name is Chana Drizin, and I'm from Dallas, Texas. I joined Beis Rivka this year and came with the expectation of being able to make friends easily. But the problem with that is, while using my phone, it keeps me from forging ahead in conversations instead of finding myself at ease with the person I'm talking to. But going forward, it's going to be Chana Drizin, unencumbered by my cell phone, nothing else. And I hope you guys will too.
So I saw this TikTok, and it was this kid sitting on her iPad, and you hear the voice of a mom saying, "If you don't listen to me right now, I'm going to take away that iPad and you're not going to have it all weekend." And she's like, "Go ahead. Take my iPad. What are you going to do, play Barbies with me all weekend?" I watched it a couple of times. First of all, because it was just hilarious. But secondly, the message just was so powerful. I am a part of this problem for myself and for my children. And so a couple of years ago, I started this thing called Family Night. And every Wednesday night, there's an intentional activity that happens as a family. And everybody comes up with what we're doing that night together as a family. First of all, you get to pick what we're having for dinner, which is pretty cool. And then we do some sort of intentional activity. It could be an art project, it could be going biking, it could be literally like anything under the sun. Even if they get competitive or frustrated or angry at each other, I'm like, great. This is part of being in a family and not being stuck in our own zone. So yeah, that TikTok has been really deeply affected me. Like, it would be so wonderful if there was a way that we can have a platform to share ideas and be able to hold each other accountable and support each other through this. Anyway, thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Neshamos. I power my phone off every day from 3 to 6 p.m. And I verbally tell my children that I'm doing this because I want to focus on them. We have a landline. This is mostly because my 12-year-old has a more active social life than me, but it's important that I have a phone in case of an emergency, chas v'shalom. I have notepads all around the kitchen, and like as I remember things that I need to do, I write them down, and we're doing great, Baruch Hashem. So my message to you tonight is, if you want to make this happen, you will make this happen. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Hi, my name is Kayla Kramer, and I'm so happy to be here because I really gained so much. It's a huge, huge struggle for me. And so a couple years ago, I learned about something that's called connection rituals. One of the things that we did is we would get together in a football huddle. I have all boys. And I would say, give me a K, and one kid would put a K. Give me an R, and we'd kind of stack up our hands, K-R-M-E-R. And then I say, Kramers are the best. We are loving, we are caring, and especially sharing. Go Kramers. We just get silly with it. So solidifying that connection as a family is a springboard for spending more time together and less time wanting to escape into technology.
I am a digital dinosaur. By the time I do figure it out, there's something new out there. And so when it comes to making guidelines for my family, when I figure things out for my now 21-year-old, 10 years later, it doesn't work for the 10-year-olds. It's not a new world. It's a completely different universe that we're dealing with. But something happened this year when we received the M.U.S.T packs on the WhatsApp, on the class WhatsApps, that made me really rethink about if I have something to add to the conversation. And I was sitting with one of my older kids. As we were going through it, I kind of saw him like rolling his eyes, and he was like, okay, yeah, you want me to say yeah? I'll say yeah. And I was like, no, this is real. And it was dinner, homework time, I put my phone away. And when I did come back to my phone, I noticed that a couple of mothers reached out to me, and they went through the pact, and they realized that a few things are not gonna work for them. And so we're gonna amend this pact so that when everybody says that they agree, then it's something real that they are really trying to follow through on. And when that happened, that simple WhatsApp text really reverberated with me, really resonated. I was like, you know what? This is what we need. Until now, we had the generals in the war rooms, the principals and the administrators sending out edicts and guidelines. We're in the trenches. We're getting the work done. You have to meet me where I'm at. You have to meet where my family's at. And if you make it real, and if you make it authentic, and it's not just in theory, this would be great if we all did this, then it's something that we can actually really bring real change. And so when Hanel called me now, I was like, I have to get behind this because this is true, this is real, this is authentic, this is effective. I saw it. And so, that being said, whenever the Rebbe spoke about chinuch, it was always about how to make the message meaningful and real. How can we be authentic role models for our children?
Ashreinu matayv chalkeinu, that we have a Rebbe that continues to guide us and seems to have foreseen what we are dealing with today. For the past 8 years, I have had the honor and privilege of managing the Nash Foundation. The foundation has distributed millions of dollars annually to the Crown Heights community. Over the years, and most recently, we have noticed an alarming trend. We have been allocating more and more funds towards emergency situations for at-risk children. When we took a closer look to identify the root cause, what was revealing to us was that while trauma of growing up in unfortunate circumstances necessitating therapeutic intervention was not increasing, a major shift was happening. We were now servicing families that had no identifiable or obvious reason for requiring therapy. Trauma, we understand. Unfortunate circumstances, we understand. But this alarming increase was happening to seemingly normal families. Why? Why was this happening in our community to children with a parent-stable upbringing? So we started to research and consult with these mothers, fathers, and even some of the teens themselves. The one unifying factor that we were able to point to, the growing usage of technology and social media amongst the children and teens. This usage was having a dramatic impact on their emotional and social development. There might be other causes that contribute, but this was the one controllable source that kept coming up time and time again. We cannot solve all the problems, but let me use an analogy. One day, a man was walking along the beach when he noticed a boy picking up a starfish and gently throwing it back into the ocean. Approaching the boy, he asked, "What are you doing?" The youth replied, "If they remain on the sand, they will die." "Son," the man said, "don't you realize that there are miles upon miles of beach and hundreds of starfish? You can't make a difference." The boy looked up to the man and replied as he bent down to pick up another starfish and throw it back into the ocean, "For this starfish, I am making a life and death difference." There are thousands of homes with children immersed in their devices, but I can guarantee you that for each mother whose eyes we open to the emerging dangers, to each home that can stall their technology usage, even for a month, to that mother, we are making a life-changing difference.
Thank you. Oh, hi, I am so sorry. I just had to send a really important message. My daughter needs something from Amazon for school for tomorrow. I found an amazing vacation place, don't worry, I saved it. And I found the most amazing meditation meme that I just want to read to you guys, it's so meaningful. I forgot to send the message. That is where I am most of the time, everywhere and nowhere, all at once. I read evidence that found that when young people use social media, it affects their sense of self. Those that spend time on social apps were more likely to feel envious of others and worse about themselves in a very real way. And studies that report a more negative mood just after 10 minutes of browsing on Instagram and Facebook. Excessive smartphone use is associated with difficulties in cognitive emotion regulation, impulsivity, impaired cognitive function, addiction to social networking, shyness, and low self-esteem. That was just the beginning. The studies were endless, the statistics were infinite, and quite frankly, I could not fathom what I was reading. And then it hit me. I am the research. I am the adult version of that young girl who just doesn't feel good after they don't get enough likes on Instagram. I am the adult who instinctively grabs my phone the moment my kids go to sleep because God forbid I should be bored, unstimulated, or just sit with my thoughts for even 1 minute. And don't worry, I have checked it during bedtime too, maybe to escape. I am the woman who finds it impossible to just put it away. It's been just over a month now since my sister and Chaya made a really big decision to pull back from social media. It has been one of the hardest and best decisions I have ever made in my entire life. For the last decade, together with Chaya, we created and built a successful brand and social media platform. We juggled being a wife, a mother, and a CEO. There were so many times you saw us, we felt like queens of social media, and other times we just felt like we were drowning. But they balanced each other out, so we kept on hustling and it kept on feeding us until it became too much. Chaya and I knew that if we were to ever fill this space again in the way that we love and want to, we needed to take a step back and unlearn things that we were getting wrong about it. Because there really was and still is so much good. The community, the connections, the people we met, the shared stories, each of them real. 4 years ago, when my late husband Shua passed away, social media is what galvanized a community to come together and raise tzedakah for my family. Social media became a platform where I could really wear my grief on my sleeve. Unfortunately, though, is not an even playing field. 8 years ago, my late husband Shua began writing his thesis for his PhD. The topic of his dissertation was the impact of smartphone use on relationship satisfaction. As I read through his paper, it was very confronting to read that the findings and numbers have become exponentially worse. Have we considered that our phone usage is a huge contributing factor to the disconnect we feel with our spouse? When we start using Facebook and Instagram, we sign an invisible non-compete pact. No amount of love or stability can compete with what Facebook and Instagram have to offer. They are designed to win. It means that when my daughter begs me for a smartphone, I will not cave for fear of her not having friends. I want her to have a life. It means that even though sometimes I assume that she can handle it, I have to remind myself that inside their brains, cognitively, they just can't. With Hashem's help, the Rebbe's guidance, and your determination, we really can give ourselves and our children a better chance.
I am here to bust a few myths. I'm going to start with that. What are the myths? First of all, this is a problem just for Lubavitchers or just a problem for us. It's not true. This is a problem for everybody. I have ministers who are coming to me because they are addicted to the internet. By the way, people in positions of leadership, and we'll talk about that, tend to specifically fall into this problem more than others because of loneliness and things like that. It used to be thought this was a problem just for the boys because we were talking about a specific use of the internet, specific use of smartphones, which boys were having problems with. They naturally tend to look at inappropriate things, etc. That's a myth. Today, I find it's a problem with girls and boys and adult men and adult women all over the place. Everybody's struggling with it. I spoke to a girl who told me that in her class, it's a flex that the girls in her class have been watching porn. It's a sign of pride, like flexing your muscles. So I learned a new word, but I also learned a new horrible fact. But it's not the only part of the problem. The next myth is, I can't do anything about it. I want you to know that I actually started to believe that. We can do something about it, and that is why I'm honored and I'm overjoyed to be here to see that mothers are going to make a difference. So, where does it start? It all starts with relationships. Human beings, by definition, need relationship. It is a fundamental necessity of all living beings to be connected. There was a fellow called Dr. Bowlby, a psychology researcher, and what he found out was that Sigmund Freud was wrong about something. Sigmund Freud said that people are attached to their mother because the mother is the source of their sustenance. And what he found out was that it's not the person who provides food which they connect to. And he did some amazing experiments on rhesus monkeys. And they connect to warmth, they connect to something which connects back to them. And what he came to the conclusion was that connection for living things is just as important as food. We all want to connect, and here lies the problem. Today we have the technology to communicate in a way which is easier and easier than it has ever been. But this communication success has actually caused that we are less and less connected. We are not connected with one another in a real and a substantial way. Children are looking for connection. They're looking to connect with their parents. They're looking to be relevant. They want to share. They want to learn. They want to feel important. They want to feel relevant. When that doesn't exist, they connect to a smartphone, because a smartphone will become their best friend. Think about what a friend is. A friend is somebody who will be there for you whenever you need them. A friend is somebody who will compliment you and do what you want it to do. If you give a child a smartphone at 3 years old, why will that child want to develop communication skills? They're communicating, they're getting what they want. Not only that, but it gives it to them immediately. They play a game, good job, stars. The phone is complimenting them better than anybody in real life. They are getting artificial social reinforcement. There is no real relationship which can give them the kind of reinforcement they are getting on their phone in a superficial way. That is what's happening to our children today. Now, I know that today there's a lot of people who are using the phone, including me, to actually communicate and to actually connect. I use Zoom 8 hours a day, unfortunately. I talk to cousins. Used to talk to my father, Olav Shalom, my mother, Olav Shalom, in Eretz Yisrael. I would get onto Zoom, WhatsApp. I'd be able to talk to her. These are all great. But the fact of the matter is, when they replace human connection, they become a problem. So that's the first issue, connection. I want to talk to you about a drug called oxytocin. Has anybody heard of oxytocin? Oxytocin is known as the cuddle drug. What is that? That is a hormone which is created in the brain, and it is released during intimacy. It does not cause sexual arousal. It causes cuddling. It causes friendship and connection. That's what it does. But it's also released when a mother nurses with her child. The oxytocin, which flows through her blood and passes on to a child, creates the bond between her and between the baby. When a husband and wife are together, the oxytocin is what creates that bond. But we also know something else about oxytocin. One of the scientists who did research on oxytocin found out when he gave oxytocin to mice who he had raised since they were babies, they would start to cuddle together. And they would cuddle together until oxytocin wore off. But he also saw something else, that when he gave oxytocin to these mice, if he tried to put his hand into the cage and take out one of those mice and separate them, they would become extremely aggressive against him. And think about it. That makes sense. That's the definition of love. That is exactly it. Because oxytocin, the same drug which causes us to bond with things, causes us to fight to the death against anything which will get in our way. Now you can understand why your children react the way they do when you take away their phone with them. Because they are physiologically, not psychologically, they are physiologically attached to that phone. And this is the sad thing. They are attached exactly the way a husband and wife are attached to each other. By the time they are ready to get married, they are not capable of getting married because they are already married. They are already attached. And that's why weeks, months, years after, I am trying to put those pieces together, trying to work with couples to show them, you guys are not married. You guys had a ceremony. You guys get along. You guys play house. They have not learned since childhood how to negotiate a conversation, how to deal with stress, how to deal with emotional self-control, how to deal with delayed gratification. All of these things are absent from them. By the way, becoming connected to your phone, and boys who become attached to their phones, whether it's what a woman should look like, or what somebody should do, or how they should behave in the bedroom, and they come into the marriage expecting these things. And it's the same thing with girls. Girls are watching movies, they're watching shows, they're watching other things online, and they're seeing what a relationship looks like in Hollywood, and they expect the same thing to happen in their lives. They're going to be ran after, they're going to be taken care of, whatever it is, whatever situation it is. And they find out that's not what a relationship is. A relationship is hard work, and they don't know how to do it. This is the problem. We're looking for connection. How do we resolve this? Well, there are two things. Connection is one of them, and the other one is mastery. Our children want to feel competent. We want to feel competent. When children don't feel good about themselves, number one, they can distract from any significant emotional pain by going to the smartphone. And what they can also do is they can feel competent because if they're playing a game or if they're talking with someone or something like that, they can feel competent. The other side of that is exactly the opposite. Children have such a strong need for connection, they run to these social media apps. And what they're getting, yes, partially is connection, but a big part of it is artificial connection. They go when they want to, they get off when they want to, they post what they want, they look for what they want, and that's what happens. So what they've got is an artificial relationship. So how do we change this? First of all, there are apps out there today which we can put on our children's phones, and like you heard earlier, there are things we can do. We can use technology to fight technology. There are apps which control content, and there are apps which control time on the phones. If you give your child a smartphone, set some guidelines. This is not something which is setting the guidelines for them. You are setting the guidelines for everybody in the family. When my son asks me, why does he need a filter on the phone? Don't you trust me? Which is a line I hear from all the kids. And I say to them, it's not that I don't trust you, I don't trust myself. This is a problem I have, and I don't think you're any different than I am. This is going to help you out. It's a very real conversation. Make a time when smartphones, don't take them to your room, don't take them into the bedroom, leave them in a public place or have them turn them off, or have software which turns it off at 9 o'clock. We know that it takes about 35 minutes for your brain to slow down from watching a screen. And what you don't know is that your brain is firing excessively, much more than when you're just reading a book, because your screen is refreshing very, very quickly. Your conscious brain doesn't see it because your conscious brain is trying to make sense of what's on the screen, not what's happening behind the screen or the refresh rate. But your brain actually sees that. The neurons in your brain are actually responding to that, and they are firing. And that's why you're stimulated. That's why you want to make sure. Don't take the smartphone to bed. You will not be able to sleep with it. Another issue I have noticed is, when I was growing up, Chil Shabbos, that was a line in the sand. That was the difference between being frum and being unreligious. Today, it's not the case. Somebody said it to me today. It's called keeping half Shabbos. I hear it from boys and girls, and it's one of the questions I ask about using the smartphone. I say, and how often do you use it? And do you have difficulty? I don't say, are you using it on Shabbos? I say, do you have difficulty? How often do you use it on Shabbos? No, just once or twice. Just as easy as that. Now, is everybody having that problem? No. Are some of our children have that problem? Yes. And that problem is growing. When we teach our children healthy ways to use a smartphone, they will grow up and they'll be wiser. Every day, every week that we hold back these things from our children, we are saving them. We are helping them learn the skills. Somebody said, once you give a child a smartphone, you can't take it back. And there's some truth to that. For some, it's an attractive thing, which is driving them. For others, it's a trauma, seeing these things which they shouldn't see. And that's why we need to set good examples for our children. There is hope. Communicate with your children. Talk to your children. Ultimately, our kids are going to these things because they're looking for connection and for mastery. So how do we fight it? Work on connection. Connect with your spouses. Make time, supper time. Turn off your devices. I was talking to somebody today with 15, 16 children. It's amazing. The children don't have smartphones. And she was talking about how she sits with each of her children. Now, child is 18, you can't stop them, that's true. But up until then, connect. Our children don't know what connection is. Our children don't even know what they are missing. How do we do that? You sit with them, spend time. Let's go eat, go out for lunch. Have them bake with you, have them cook with you, have them do something with you. Talk to them, ask them questions. Work with your children helping them feel that they are masterful, that they are competent. If you have to give incentives, give incentives. There's a Rosh Yeshiva, Nadav Lubavitch Yeshiva, in Minneapolis who pays $700 to kids. He says to them, if you will commit not to have a smartphone, I am going to give you $700. This is what he does to keep kids. And I say to him, is it worth it? He says, it's another year saving these kids' lives. And he's right. Make a trip with these kids. Say, take away the smartphone, we'll go to Eretz Yisrael. We'll do something like that. Whatever it takes, just to get that smartphone out of the hands. If you can't do that, then set some other guidelines. Decide what's realistic. I'm not saying that everybody has to spend $700 to take the smartphone away. My point is just, it's okay to use incentives. This is a very big thing. Do what you can, it's important. The other thing is mastery. Give them something which they can feel masterful about. If it's music, if it's sports, if it's art, whatever it is. Remember, some people will say to me, that's not appropriate. Dance, exercise, why would I do that with my child? But ask yourself, which one is worse? We've got to think that way when it comes to these things. Our children need time to rest. They need to do productive things, and we can give it to them. So keep that in mind. These are things we can do positively, rebuilding our connection, giving our children a sense of mastery, teaching them things. Of course, they're going to say no in the beginning. But over time, if we work on it, they will start to do it. Figure out, ask people. Kids maybe who like to learn ride a bike, they can set a goal to ride 20 miles or something like that, pay and give them a reward for it. Art, we need to have talent contests and things like that where children are learning and feeling good that they can excel, or they can do well, not only in academics and not only in social situations, but in other situations too. You know, B'Hashgacha Pratis, tonight is Chavdala Teves, which is the Alter Rebbe's yahrzeit. And I want to share a word from the Alter Rebbe, which I think is very important. The Alter Rebbe says that in Ikvus de Mashiach, in the times of the Mashiach, he says we have two goals. One goal is mitzvah saseh, and the other goal is mitzvah lo saseh. And he explains, when a person does a mitzvah saseh, he does a positive commandment, what he is doing is, he's showing that there is HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the world. He's showing that there is a God when we do mitzvah saseh. Baruch Hashem. We live in a generation where everybody is comfortable doing mitzvahs, doing mitzvah saseh, eating kosher, it's available. The Torah, there's learning available. Everything is available to do the mitzvahs as beautiful as you want. But the Alter Rebbe says, the next challenge is mitzvahs lo saseh. Lo saseh means looking at something which you want to do and saying no, challenge. This is the ultimate commitment. The ultimate commitment in every relationship is when you say no to somebody else to be able to show how valuable the person in front of you is. When I hang up the phone with a client and I say to my wife, I am here for you, that's when she knows how valuable she really is. When we hang up the phones and we're present for our children, we are now struggling with this lo saseh, because lo saseh means not saying that there is Hashem in the world, but saying that the world has no power over me. In the language of Chassidus, as eine Stockenwelt, there's no world, meaning the world doesn't have any power. This is the ultimate goal we have, is the mitzvah lo saseh, to show not that there's a God in the world, but the world doesn't have its power over me. And the Alter Rebbe says something even more interesting. He says, even if we have this fight every day of our life, and every moment of our life, every moment which we succeed, even if we fail, he says, Ein yokar kazu, I'm not quoting exactly, but he says, this is yokar mikol yokar, this is the most precious thing to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even a 5-minute delay in self-gratification. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu bench us that the work of M.U.S.T, this goal of getting our children delaying our children from technology and keeping them away from technology, whether it's a day, whether it's a year. And hopefully will come a time when our children, as long as they're in school, will not be using smartphones. I know that's an impossibility right now. I don't see it happening. But I have faith in you, and I know that people who really want to make it happen will make it happen. If not for everybody, just increase it as much as we can. This is an amazing goal. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I wrote like this very nice poetic goodbye and encouraging everyone like so eloquently, but really, I'm not gonna look at it because I just want to feed off the energy in this room. I think that my son came home today and he said, you know, Ma, the boys were saying like, oh, your mother's the one against technology. And I'm so not. But you know what? I don't feel like we're against something. That's what it is. It's not a negative thing. The energy in this room is so positive. It's so encouraging. I know I'm walking out feeling like I was so overwhelmed and befuddled by this, and now I have a little more clarity. I can take it day by day. I could take it moment by moment. I could take it hour by hour. Everyone else is struggling out there. I could take Kayla's idea. I could take Hani's idea. I could take Bradel's idea. I could take Nechami's idea and take little bits and pieces and put them in my life. So we're not against anything. We're for connection. We're for loving. We're for great kids, great parents, and a great community. Thank you so much for showing up. And together we really can do this.